This is the Porsche 911 GTS, sports car perfection, developed for speed, precision, and most importantly, for fun. It might be the best car that Porsche make, or at least it would be if it weren't for this. The Taycan GTS, a relative newcomer, was developed for seemingly very different reasons, but has found itself challenging the 911 not only in terms of speed, but also in terms of popularity. Since its release, it's very quickly gone on to become Porsche's best-selling car. But which of these two is the better performance car? Which is quickest in a straight line and which is most fun around corners? Today, we find out. Today, we're putting the GTS versions of both cars head-to-head because they're a very close match. Both are all-wheel drive. Both cost in the region of £110,000. Both do 0 to 62 in under 4 seconds. And crucially, because they're GTS models, they're both pitched at drivers who like to have fun. But what do their differences look like on track? Time for a drag race. Historically, it's always the electric car that has the advantage here, and with 598 horsepower, the Taycan GTS should be quick.
3, 2, 1. Go!
But it's the 911 that takes the win. It has a horsepower disadvantage, but a superior power-to-weight ratio that means the EV is no match. So of course, the main thing we love about the 911 GTS is the engine, a good old internal combustion engine. Almost seem like dinosaurs, don't they? But for a sports car, they work so well. This is a 3-litre flat 6. It makes 480 horsepower and 570 newton meters of torque. Not the biggest numbers in the world, but as you've just seen, it's incredibly effective. The key thing is lightness. The power to weight ratio in the 911 GTS is superior to the power to weight ratio in the Porsche Taycan. 300 horsepower per ton as opposed to around 258. The noise is brilliant as well. Obviously it's got gas particulate filters and soft limiters, but I'll just floor it along this straight. Yes, the tone of that 3-litre flat 6 is lovely, and the sound as you downshift is just so engaging. Which brings me to another point. The GTS is available with either a manual gearbox or an 8-speed PDK. This has the PDK fitted, and actually, I prefer this. Porsche's manual gearboxes have a really long second gear, which means that when you're down in second gear, doing low revs, and you floor it, you get pretty much nothing until you get into the sweet spot. But in this, second gear always feels alive. And the speed of the gear changes is just utterly ridiculous as well. I believe it shifts gears in about 0.1 of a second, so literally within the blink of an eye, up and down the box it goes. And it never complains as well. Whatever gear you want, even if it's inappropriate, the car is going to give it to you. Oh, absolute joy. This GTS features a host of chassis tweaks that set it apart from the base 911s. It rides 10mm lower and uses the same helper springs you'll find on the 911 Turbo on the rear axle. These help keep the mainsprings under tension, maximizing traction. It also features Porsche torque vectoring and all-wheel steer for tighter, more precise cornering, not to mention brakes from the 911 Turbo for superior stopping power. It feels absolutely fantastic in your hands as well. The steering is immaculate. Porsche do the best steering in the game, and it's so alive, so direct, so precise. You put this car where you want it and it goes. The seats are tremendous as well. They hold you in place absolutely perfectly, so you feel like you're part of the car. Such a wonderful machine to drive. Right, let's try and set a lap. Here we go, off the line. Okay, launch control hooks up nicely. Little lift here. Well, dab of brakes actually. First apex, all important. Cheat this little right here, power down, back on the brakes, right, left chicane. Late on the brakes, late as I dare anyway, but get it turned in. Feather throttle. Oh, that feels nice. Okay, I think that might be it. Across the line, very, very nice. That was fun. That was a lot of fun, a lot of drama, a lot of involvement, a lot of movement that I felt a part of. Felt like I was in a machine, certainly, but also I had the machine under control. Love that. Love that. Right, remember this face. Gonna try and compare that to the Taycan, but my God, that feels fantastic.
And also remember this time, 33.05 is the figure the Taycan has to beat. But first, what's it like to drive?
The first thing you notice, no word of a lie, are the seats. Very different to the 911s. These don't grip you, especially up here around the upper back area, anywhere near as well as the 911. So through these corners, I'm moving around a lot more in my seat. That left and right, yeah, definitely not as snug and as secure. Apart from that, the big difference is the refinement. Way quieter than a 911, which you'd expect is an electric car. Like it or love it, that of course has its advantages as well as disadvantages. I'm moving around quite a lot, aren't I? Interesting. So the advantage on the road of a Taycan GTS is that it's quiet and comfortable. It feels really nice. I think if I was going on a simple errand to the shops or taking the family somewhere, the Taycan is the car I'd jump into. On a track, it's definitely not quite as involving, but we'll push on, go a bit quicker and see if there's any fun to be extracted from this electric beast. Power comes from twin motors, one on the front axle and one on the rear. They're not quite the same motors you get on the entry-level Taycan or on the 4S, which is a brilliant car, by the way. They're actually the same motors you get on the turbo, except here they're in a lower state of tune. You get 517 horsepower whenever you want, for as long as you want. But during overboost, during launch control, it generates 600 horsepower. What's impressive is, of course, the power delivery or the torque delivery. You put your foot down and the car leaps forward with an amazing turn of pace. If you're just pootling around in a 911 and you floor it, the engine has to spin up, the turbos have to spool up. But in this, no, it's like a tap. Instant access to fun. The sound is quite good as well. Okay, nowhere near as good as that 3-litre flat 6 in a 911, but the GTS Taycan has a specially developed sports sound, which is a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more kind of metallic sounding than the artificial sound you get in any other Taycan. I think it sounds really good. It also does these really interesting fake downshifts, so it makes you feel like the car's changing down a gear when you're under braking or changing up a gear whenever you accelerate. Speaking of which, it also has a 2-speed transmission, so there are actually gears in this Taycan. You can't change them, but you can feel them shift from first gear to second gear, which again makes it a little bit more interesting, really. Let's talk about the elephant in the room now. I think elephant is an appropriate word, and that is the weight of the Taycan GTS, 2,300 kilograms. So it's 700 kilograms more heavy than the 911. I mean, that's more than a Citroen 2CV or 1.5 Caterham 7s. This thing is, well, it's a porker that's a bit of a porker.
It's worth saying that the Taycan has skinnier, less grippy tyres than the 911, aimed at maximising range, so this, combined with the extra weight, will affect its track performance. A Taycan on equivalent rubber would no doubt be slightly quicker in the bends. But this being the GTS version, it has a few chassis systems to benefit handling, including rear-wheel steering and Porsche Torque Vectoring Plus, which should be more responsive than the version in the 911 thanks to the use of electric motors. It might be a heavy car, but it's incredibly agile and willingly plays the hooligan anytime you fancy.
Credit to the steering as well, absolutely fantastic. It feels every bit as good as the steering in the 911 in terms of its accuracy and responsiveness. Porsche do the best steering in the game. You point this car and it goes exactly where you need it. It's fabulously involving. I love driving this car, I really do. Right, should we set a lap time? I feel like it's not going to be as good as the 911, but we're going to do science anyway. Launch control. Punchy off the line. Little lift here. Hit this apex. Okay. Slow and steady through this little sequence, because if you don't, you just end up understeering everywhere. Careful on the brakes here as well, because it doesn't like to stop quite as well as the 911, but that is hooked up reasonably nicely on the power. All the way, all the way, all the way. Approaching the line and bang. Yep. I don't think I'm going to be going too much faster in this car. First thing to note, I am smiling, but not as much fun as the 911. It just isn't. The weight is the thing that's holding this car back. Definitely. You can feel it through the corners. You feel yourself understeering pretty much everywhere. You got to manage it, and that takes away from some of the fun. On the road, this is a mega machine. On a track, it starts to reveal its weaknesses. Tremendous technical achievement, but weight is king in a situation like this. And the Taycan, that's its Achilles heel.
The Taycan's fastest time was a 34.15, 1.1 seconds slower than the 911. But we expected that. Its power to weight deficit being arguably the biggest factor. The Taycan, as good as it is, will have to shed quite a few pounds before it challenges an equivalent 911. Fair play to the Taycan though. It's worth remembering that the 911 has been around since 1964. Porsche has honed its abilities for almost 60 years. The Taycan is a relative newcomer, and almost at its first attempt has given the 911 a real run for its money. It's also worth remembering that the Taycan is a better everyday road car than the 911, with proper rear seats, 2 large boots, both front and rear, and it's more affordable. The Taycan GTS is £7,000 cheaper than the 911 GTS. The final verdict then is that the 911 is a better performance car and one that delivers more fun. But the real winner here is Porsche in delivering 2 incredible machines.